Previously in our discussions of how to go about determining land value or property value, we had mentioned the approach of the gishat hashva'a, which is the comparison method, where essentially you compare your property to similar properties that are like it. And what was this method that we said? We said, well, you have your house, and you'd like to know what value you should give it. So you look at other houses that would be similar to it, and you look at what they're sold for. You calculate a certain price per square meter, what's called in Hebrew shach memutza lemar, an average shekel value per square meter. And you'll then multiply that average shekel per square meter by whatever number of square meter you have in your house, and that's how you determine your value. Now that's straightforward and simple, so long as the similarity is simple and your property is completely similar to the properties of your comparison. But the question is, what would we do where there's differences between the two properties, or between your comparatives amongst themselves and the property at hand that you're trying to appraise? So let's try to give a more complicated case. And let me give first a disclaimer from the very beginning. Anytime you do a gishat hashva'a comparison, you really need at least 3 comps, at least 3 transactions. That having been said, in this example, we'll just be showing 1. So let's give some unique attributes to this comparative transaction that we're talking about. First, we have its general outline, or its shetach migrash, its area of its yard. And let's say ours is a little bit of a smaller shetach migrash, a little lesser backyard. Then we'll give a nice little machsan to our comparative, some kind of a storage house in the backyard, in the front in this case. We'll give them maybe a little pool that they can have. And you get the idea already that there's a dissimilarity now between our two properties, so that if one, say for example, sold for 2 million, let's say the comparison that you're talking about sold for 2 million, the question still remains, how should we apply that to our property in question, now that they're so different? We try to overcome this difficulty through the use of equivalencies, or equivalencies of metrage, or in Hebrew it's called mar Equivalency, Equivalency, or mar akvi for short. And the idea of equivalency is as follows. Let's take all the different aspects of the house, all the different both primary and secondary aspects of it, and let's assign them a particular value or a coefficient of value from 0 to 1. Obviously it's not going to be 0, but within the scale of 0 to 1, where the primary area of the house is 1 and something very minuscule will be maybe 0.1, and within that scale, and assigning everything a particular coefficient of equivalency, we can then unify everything to a common denominator, a common unit of value, and from that we can then extrapolate. So we'll start with our comparison that we were comparing to. We'll call that comp number 1, and we'll give that shetach migrash of, let's say, 500. That's the total plot area. And the area of the shetach ikari, let's just say that the entire main space of the house is 200 and it's all on one floor. And then we'll give it a machsan, we mentioned, in the front yard of 12 square meters, and a bricha, we gave it a pool of 30 square meters. And then finally you have the chatzer being the overall yard, backyard, front yard that you're getting from what's left. So you'll notice that the entire area here is basically the tachsit, is the coverage which takes away from your chatzer. So that if I can just minus this tachsit from the shetach migrash, I'll have, so I'm going to make a new column for the equivalency coefficients that I'm going to assign. And I'm going to give my shetach ikari a coefficient of 1 because that's prime value. And the remainders are going to be given certain conventions of coefficients that are among the shamayim. So that, for example, the machsan, assuming it's, in this case it's attached from the house, we give it about a 0.5 value. Were it to be actually a part of the house or adjacent to the house, then it might get a certain higher coefficient because in fact you could use that as main space. But in this case we'll give it a value of 0.5. The pool will give it a value of 0.35, considering that we're going to see in a second general backyard yard area is around 0.20, so we'll give the pool a little bit more, 0.35, maybe 0.40. And the chatzer, Well, the Chaser, as I said, is somewhere between 0.15 and 0.25, so in this case we'll give it a 0.20. And now we have just to add everything together and see what our equivalent metrage is, what our mar akvi is of all this. Okay, so now we're going to multiply them out. So 200 times 1 is 200, 12 times a half is 6, 30 times 0.35 is going to be 10.5, and 250 times 20% is 258 times 20, 51.6. Now these are all the mar akvis of each individual component, and now we have to add them all up together. We get 268.1 is our mar akvi for our comparative, for our iskat hashva'a number 1. That is the mar akvi what you're getting, and what it was sold for was 2 million. So now we have to take a price per mar akvi. We're going to divide the 2 million by the 268.1. We're going to divide the shach, the value, by the mar akvi that you're getting to get a price per mar akvi. Just take my 2 million and divide it by 268.1 mar akvi, and I'm going to get a shovi shach lemeter meruba akvi of 7,459. That is what I'm taking out from my comparative, that each mar akvi is worth 7,460 built, as being built. So that if it's actual main space, it's worth 7,460 per square meter. If we're talking about the chaser, it's 20% of that per square meter. Now we have to go to our house. Our house does not have the same characteristics, and now we have to do an analysis of what the mar akvi is of our house. And that's what we're going to do here. But we know that 7,460 is the price per mar akvi. So with that in mind, let's go to our house now, and we will make a new table for our house. Use a nice green color. And let's say our shetach migrash is 300 as opposed to the comp, which was 500. And let's say our shetach ikari is now 150. So we have a much smaller yard, and we don't have anything else. Our chaser is going to be 150. Using the same coefficients, the same mekadmim, we're going to come to a mar akvi of 180 mar akvi. Now we can just multiply that straight by a value we got, 180 times 7460, and that yields us 1.34 million. And that would be how you would extrapolate the value to our house, given the comp that you had, and basically reducing all the differences and managing all those different characteristics between the house in question and your iskat hashva'a. So just to summarize, what have we accomplished here? We've seen that we've taken dissimilar items, and through equivalency we've made them to be an equal unit. We've given them equal units by way of reducing everything to a common mar akvi, a common equivalent meter, and we arrived at a particular value for that mar akvi, and through that we're able to then branch ourselves out to a lot more comparisons than just cookie cutter exact apartments that are exactly alike or houses that are exactly alike. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.